It is time.
You mentioned that you were a big Phish fan growing up. So how did you first hear of Phish? Did like one of your friends take you to a show, or like how did Mike Greenhaus and Phish first happen?
Well, I first heard about Phish in the mid to early '90s. At camp, I heard the song "Fee," which I would learn was kind of a little bit of an atypical song for them, but I really loved that song. And then dug into their catalog, and yeah, they've been a real gateway to a lot of different types of music for myself, and of course, also a great band to go see live over the years. And yeah, their kind of roles as musical curators. A lot of the music we talked about today, whether it's roots music or psychedelic music or indie rock music or all these different genres. I really first discovered through Phish and either covers I did or reference points that the guys talked about in interviews. So it is kind of amazing that they are a little bit of a Rosetta Stone for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people who are both listening and going to see them live.
All Trey had to do was mention King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard one time, and then all of a sudden, everyone likes King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah, we've been covering the Relics way before then. I'll give us some credit for that.
Nice, but they are. It's like I think that the biggest legacy that a band leaves behind is not so much what they're spearheading, but the wake, that's in behind them. Like the Grateful Dead, there are so many bands that are covering them and that are sounding like them, and just like Phish, there are so many bands that are covering them and sounding like them, and just like the Disco Biscuits, there's so many Jamtronica bands out there, and I think it's so interesting, not just the band, but what happens after the band and how people react even long after they may be done playing music. So actually this song was another fan pick just for you, Mike. We asked Greg Knight, the publicist for Goose and for Greg Knight Music, to suggest a song for you. So Greg Knight had some things to say. He said that Mike wrote an article in 2004 for Relics and Jam Bands on his quest to see Fee live. He said, I always really liked the article. It was more of a vignette on his experience immersing himself into the scene and a cool exploration of the quirky aspects of the journey that are all too common for those of us who hit the road for tour, but foreign to most folks outside of the scene. And he also said, in reference to the band's impending breakup, that maybe in 6 years they will resurface as a full-time band, and he was almost correct. They got back together in 2009. I think that there's a lot to say about that, because let's use like Phish and Fee as a thing. Like, it's not about seeing the song, right? And it's not always about like, oh, I like that song from this version better than that version. It's when you get into, oh, I like the song from this era of the band, then when they played the song in that era of the band is when you really, really get deep as hell. You know what I mean? And I feel like jam bands and thinking that way, it's kind of like taking up the same place in your brain that sports do, and people even actually, Greg, for example, started the Goose fantasy tour, like the fantasy football, calling out what they're going to play and things like that. And even, John Barber from the Disco Biscuits, his podcast is called Touchdowns All Day. So I think that people make sports references to jam bands like all the time. You know what I mean? I think it's just so fascinating, right? So, Lucy, are you a Phish fan? You ever really sat down and listened to Phish before?
Yeah. I mean, you can't not, but I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan. As in, by that I mean not that I dislike them, just not that I listen regularly.
Yeah. What about you, Kai?
I'm pretty much in the same boat. I think I've listened to Phish a lot more hanging around you guys than I usually do on my own time.
Nice. Yeah, my sister, I like Phish. My sister's seen them like 125 times. So she's, in there like swimwear. Yeah. And actually, she literally gets to the venue like at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and waits right by the door until they open the door. And then she sprints to the front row. And she's done that like 100 times.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
That's
so she's
dedication.
like, yeah. Well, that's what.
That's Phish fans, though.
Exactly. That's what a lot
like
of these
that.
bands do. And so also just another comment about this song. So Fee is one of the 3 Phish songs, including a song called Punch You in the Eye and The Sloth. that include a lyrical reference to an image that must keep Trey up at night, which is getting a paper cut on the nipple. So that's like a common Phish thing.
God.
And it is,
The triple
terrifying.
nipple?
Yeah, and it is terrifying.
Oh
It's
my
like one of
God.
those things that probably stayed with him, and he's conveying that anxiety to everyone
so
else in the
terrible.
song. So it's great that he's doing that. So
I'll never forget that.
we're here listening to Phish from their 1989 album Junta, but this is actually a rendition from July 29th, 2003 at the Post-Gazette Pavilion at Star Lake in Burgettstown, Pennsylvania. We're here with Mike Greenhaus, the Alex Magazine editor-in-chief, listening to Fee right here on Galaxy Jams Reacts. It's like right when he's doing that, like everyone already knows what's about to go down.
And they
And
memorize
that's like
everything.
so much fun.
I think Greg did his homework because this was the show, if I remember correctly, the article I wrote in 2004 was about.
Nice.
So, good work, Greg.
The cool shade of the banana tree on the rugged trail toward the balcony. A child of the 20th century, a dried up Goliath and a weasel named Fee. Far away in another place, a fading beauty named Millie Grace, a gospel singer with pots on her face and a bamboo cane to help her keep the pace. He was a Buddhist prodigy, long past the age of maturity. Someday he knew it would set him free, like it did for Floyd, the chimpanzee. Oh, Fee, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath. Oh, Fee, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath.
Such a classic, dude. I love it. He just passes the football right to Paige.
Lily in a bar in Peru, his heart was jumping like a kangaroo, like a beast in a cage in an old Dutch zoo. It was hopping and jumping in wooden shoes. But Floyd was jealous and alone. He wanted Lily for his own, a desperate craving in his bones. Their love, he said, I will not condone. Then one day on a ship to Quebec, Floyd found Fee and Millie on a lover's trek. He picked up a bottle and broke off the neck. It sliced through the air and Fee hit the deck. Oh, Fee, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath. Oh, Fee, trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and
Dang, it's the Paige show.
Millie turned and began to scream at Floyd. She said, you think you're pretty mean. And though she was as thin as a small string bean, she slammed him in the face with a nectarine. Floyd fell back over the edge of the ship till he hung from the rail by his fingertip. Millie said, Floyd, I'll make you lose your grip. With this tiny piece of paper, I can make you slip. So Millie took that paper and did the deed. Floyd hit the water with astonishing speed, and as the shark circled in and began to feed, Millie knew her weasel was finally free. trying to live a life that's completely free. Floyd isn't dead, he's nothing but a ripple. Cause Millie took out paper and sliced him on the nipple. Whoa, oh,
There it was.
they're trying to live a life that's completely free. Floyd is dead, he's nothing but a ripple. Cause Millie took out paper and sliced him on the nipple. They're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath. Whoa, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and catch your breath.
Mike, what is going through your head when you're listening to this song, a song that you chase? So you were like looking for this song and you saw this live when they were playing it?
Well, I think that the version that we're listening to right now was from a show that took place in 2003, as you mentioned, and that was, I believe, the first time I saw that song live. I had already seen Phish, I don't know, 50 times or something like that at that point, and it was always so funny that this is the song that kind of seeded my fandom, and inadvertently led me to so much music and meeting so many friends, so much experience. But I'd never heard it live until this moment. So that was a very exciting time.
So were you like surrounded by all your friends and getting hugs, or were you like in the bathroom and like running out to try and catch it?
No, I was with a bunch of great friends, and this show is at the time at least was kind of a famous show where they did a lot of different bust outs of songs that hadn't played for a while or hadn't played that tour yet. And I believe that the story is that it's 2003, so the band just got their first iPods, and they loaded the iPods up with, I think one song or one version of every song the band had played or covered, and they were kind of scrolling through and writing down some of the songs they hadn't played yet that tour, or hadn't played in a couple of years, as the case maybe for some other songs they played that night, and they kind of ran through them all. So it was a very exciting night for a lot of people who were chasing these songs, and it was really special that I got to hear this one that I had first heard about this through.
Nice. Kai, what did you think?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with Phish songs, so this sounds like other Phish songs that I've heard. But
Yeah.
I know that the fan base for Phish is insane, mainly from your sister, actually, from all the stories you've told me. Our lead guitarist in our band really, really loves Phish. He goes to their shows. Probably not as much as your sister does, but pretty close. He loves their music a lot.
Yeah, they're one of those bands that it's like a whole, the more that you dig, the bigger the pie, right? Like you can, casually listen to them, or you can easily make them like the focus of your whole life, and you can get so much fruit, from both of those options.
I can only imagine that a Phish show is pretty wild, though. Like you've been to one though, right, Mike?
Yeah, I've been to probably about 10. And it's always a fun time. I mean, when you get to those like huge venues, it's like,
it must be huge.
The band and the production is one thing, but then like getting there and then like the people you meet, and then that's like a whole nother thing too. It's like any gathering, It's like the band becomes not so much the only focus, but then it's also like the community and the friends and, everything that you made along the way, and it's what makes it so much fun. What did you think,
culture.
Lucy?
Yeah, I totally see the draw. I really do. It's very chill to listen to. Like, I see what you mean, where you can kind of drown everything else out and just feel the music. But at the same time, the lyrics are incredible. Like, they tell such a creative story. And some of them are hilarious. Some of them are probably a little more cynical. I wish I could hear better in this song. But, like, it's deep at the same time. So, I see why people love it. You can just sit back and enjoy it, or you can, really meditate on the message that's being said. Yeah.
Phish is really good at having those like idiosyncrasies, which can make sense the way that any words can make sense if you put them together, and, or they're really, really good at telling extremely textured, deep stories that have a lot of detail to it, It's cool that they're able to do both. And all right, why don't we chase the rest of the song? Let's get back into it. See, they just finished the words, and so now this is when the goods. This is when they give you the goods.
This song in particular always kind of reminded me of like a R-rated nursery rhyme or something. You know, when they do the jam at the end, it's almost like, you know, the song is just like, you know, dissolving into this really cool textured moment.
Mm-hmm.
Such a cool way of putting it.
Yeah, they're so good at just driving the car like anywhere they want to go.
Yeah, it's like it's almost relaxing, but then it's edgy at the same time.
It's just therapeutic, you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes therapy can be harsh and sometimes therapy can be pillowy and wonderful, and they can give you both. This is cool. Nice, really soft interplay. Hell yeah, dude. Oh man, this stopped way too early. It went to the next one, but I gotta, you know, I could sit here and listen to that whole show with you, Mike. You know, and you know, this is one of those shows where, like, I remember one time I was seeing the Disco Biscuits, right? And there I am. I'm like sitting in the crowd, you know, like I'm maybe smoking some weed or doing some cool guy stuff. And like, you know, the band's playing and I'm jamming out to the band. And then like while the band's playing, like I just start like daydreaming and I start thinking about like, you know, like, oh, I haven't like talked to my parents in a while, you know, and I start thinking of like different things about my life, you know, and then all of a sudden, wham, I'm like slammed right back. I'm like, oh, wait, like I'm at a concert. And I look at the band and I'm like, you know, like anything's possible, you know, anything. And that's what I feel like the feeling that Phish gives me too, is that it's limitless. You know, those four guys can literally do anything in the world, you know, and it's great, you know, that people are documenting it so well.
It's like the studies on psychedelic drugs and how they can be medically and psychologically very healing in that way. Like music, especially in this sense, feels like it's doing the same thing. Like just what you described, where suddenly you realize you were thinking about how you haven't talked to your parents. Like those are the kind of moments where your mind can wander and sort of make these realizations that it might not have been able to if it hadn't been led there somehow.
Guided, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to like a Duncan Trussell podcast, and one of the things he said was like some people when they smoke weed, they get anxious because the weed makes them think about like things in their life that maybe they don't want to think about, and they've been like pushing it to the side and brings it to the forefront. You're kind of like, oh, you know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes bands can do that, you know, like when you're watching a band and you're like unlocking different parts of your brain by being inspired and things like that. Like that's why, for example, you'll be at a show and look over and there's like someone like bawling their eyes out, you know I mean? Or and then you look over and the person next to them is like jumping up and down with a huge smile on their face, you know. It's just, you know, being able to feel something, anything, you know, especially as you get older, so rare, for a band to be able to like unlock like that vulnerable, like, really, really raw, part of you. And that's why I think a lot of people, they go to see these bands and, they go to this lifestyle is because they're not chasing like the band and they're not just chasing the feeling, like they're chasing like that growth, that happens when, you have like that mindful meditation. And I feel like this band does such a good job of doing that,
Yeah. Phish is therapy. That's why everybody loves them.
No, for sure. Definitely. So, do you remember what was your first Phish show?
My first Phish show
Mm-hmm.
was New Haven, 1998.
Nice. That's so cool. So did you like, how did you know about them first and then go to see, or like, did someone was like, hey, what are you doing tonight? You want to go? And you're like, all right, like that?
Yeah, I first heard about them, as I mentioned before, like 92, 93 at camp, and gradually got more into their music. But at that point I was, in middle school and early high school and wasn't able to go, although, I definitely had friends who went, and there's a couple missed opportunities, here or there, but I finally got to see them a little later on in high school, and it was, it's been a constant, ever since. But by the time I actually saw them live, I already had a copy of, the Farmer's Almanac, which is the set list compilation that both at that point they
Yeah,
sold in
didn't
bookstores, and
Andy
Andy,
Bernstein write
Andy
that?
Bernstein, yeah, who now actually shares a very thin wall in our office at Relics, which is
Oh,
through
cool.
headcount
He
of his
was on our
office. So
show.
yeah, I was, I was already checking out set lists and conversing with other fans pretty regularly. So I came in pretty prepared, which was good.
Yeah, it's like when you look at like, the score of the latest game is like the same thing as when you look at set lists from the latest show.
Yeah,
You can,
definitely.
it's like the same kind of thing. AJ Roberts in the chat says that rock concerts in church lights up the same center in your brain.
wow.
That's
Cool.
definitely true. I mean, I feel like when I go to shows, it's like hallowed ground sometimes, and it's like a traveling church circus, that's like that, right? So it must be so cool to be at the center of it all, especially if you're like in the band and able to see, all the people in the crowd and how happy they are and like the mixed emotions and everything that's going on. Like what a rush it must be all the time.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Mike with Galaxy Jams Reacts. We hope that you enjoyed that React video. Be sure to check out the links below of when we're going to be live streaming our next show and also how to watch full episodes. Please hit that subscribe button. Every single one helps.